Hi, I'm Jane Farnham from Great British Talent, and welcome to our series of video podcasts where we meet our very talented speakers who are all available for your corporate events. Now, essentially, this is an opportunity for you to find out more about our speakers, what they talk about, and how they can help you to add value to you and your business. Today, we are chatting to organisational change agent, Alan O'Neill. Hi, Alan.
Hello there, Jane, and thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. I could sit and listen to your dulcet tones all day.
Well, I'll try to keep it up then.
So I was doing a little bit of research into your background. Your business experience is rather extensive. So tell me a bit about your business journey.
The extensive business experience already suggests age, Jane. So we're on the wrong track straight away here. You know that. It's like, I was somewhere recently, somebody said the silver fox in the corner. The only silver fox that I can remember is Stuart Granger. Do you remember him? The actor? No, you don't remember him, before your time. And he was known as the silver fox. He was ancient forever. He was born ancient. So
You've
now,
morphed into him.
However. So look, I am a change management consultant. I've been doing what I'm doing for 30 plus years, having been a retailer before that. But in my time as a change management consultant, I've been really privileged to support some of the most amazing brands around the world in B2B and in B2C. Large, very large corporates, multi-billion profits, not just turnover, but right down to family SME businesses. And I love working with all types. Pretty much agnostic to the industry as well, Jane. I mean, right across industry, it doesn't matter. I do have a particular, strong focus on retail because I've got lots of really posh and great iconic retail brands like Harrods and Selfridges and Jimmy Choo and Ann Summers and Fenwick and Fortnum Mason. They're all great retail clients in the UK. But it's not just about retail. I've also worked with Essex Fire Station, the DVLA, where you get your license, right through to EDF Energy, and so on and so on. So it's change management is my core expertise. That's what I do as a consultant, Jane, specializing in culture, strategy, and leadership. But as a speaker, I speak on those topics, but also on customer experience. And I know we'll chat too about my 7 steps to profit, which we can come back to.
So when did you actually start your speaking journey? That it obviously naturally morphed from your consulting work, I gather.
Well, exactly, Jane, because when I started in consulting, I actually started in training. So training workshops, you can imagine what that's like, standing in front of a room of whatever, 12 to 15 people, training them on particular topics. And that gives you, that helps you to hone your craft as a presenter and a facilitator and watching out for feedback and reading the room and so on. But of course, as time went on then, Jane, I morphed from training, pure training, into change management when I went back to college and refreshed my studies and so on. And I moved on to what I now call change management, which of course, change management is a mothership or an umbrella for training. Training is a means to change rather than the end in itself. So the speaking then came on the back of that, Jane, because when you build a confidence and an ability and to connect and communicate with an audience, I then started being invited to speak. And I didn't really know much about the speaking business, I'll be honest, 20 years ago. But then I became very passionate about it. And then it kicked off like a boomerang or like a hockey stick, I should say. So I'm speaking now about 20 years and all around the world. And just not long ago, I was in Auckland, for example. I'm now talking to you from Dubai, where I spend a lot of my time and where I actually live in Dublin. But I spend a lot of time, I'm pretty much on the go all the time. And most of it is speaking.
That's great. Now, getting into the nitty gritty then, obviously our clients are always looking for people to help them through some kind of organisational change. A lot of obstacles, I would imagine, stem around corporate culture. Can a company change their culture?
Well, you're right to say that change is at the core of everything. So whenever I get a briefing from a client, whether it be for something around leadership or customer service or culture or the 7 steps, at the core of all of that is some need to change. And of course, we all know that the reason why the theme has been identified at the event is because change is needed and some people are not changing. or maybe the senior C-level execs, the CEO or somebody wants to reboot or maybe give a sharp jolt to this need for change, whatever it might be. And culture, I mean, handling and managing change is about having the right culture in the first place. And that's about, having that thought process, that willingness to embrace change, Jane, rather than, that phrase you'll often hear from some people, oh, well, we've always done it this way. I mean, it's so frustrating when you hear that. And it's quite the opposite to being good at change. It's quite the opposite to innovation. And in our fast moving and changing world, those phrases should be just in the bin and nowhere else. So it is about culture. But that, of course, that brings up issues around resistance to change. And I should say, Jane, I don't believe that, when you often hear people saying that, oh, people resist change. Yes, that is true for some people. There's a cohort of people who resist change, but I don't immediately think that they're bad people, Jane, or that they're being resisting change to be deliberate about it. There are some genuine, and I've done a lot of research in this for my third book, actually, that there is a lot of genuine good reason why people resist change. When I say good reason, because it's in here, maybe they've got inbuilt anxieties, maybe past experiences of change weren't good, maybe there's a risk aversion. It can even be the amygdala in the brain where it detects danger and emotions and it just, oh, no, thank you. And we as leaders have a duty of care, not only around the process of managing change, but also empathizing and acknowledging in any change journey that, look, we've got a role to play in helping our people embrace change. And at the root of that then is culture, Jane, like your question. Culture is key in all of this. And culture, one of the things that enables great change management is a skill. It's a learnable skill. But at the core to enable that is the culture in the first place. Most people, when you ask them after they've gone through a change program of whatever sort it is, large, small, or whatever, and you ask them how are they now feeling now that they've been through the change, most people, Jane, will tell you that they feel good. It's actually better. We're in a better place. Now, that's because they have the benefit of hindsight, of course, to look back. Now, I think there's a message in that for us leaders, that if we can almost give hindsight in advance, what I mean by that is communicate. Cotter, that famous, one of the first guys who talked about change management, he talked about communicating to the power of 10. And I completely concur with that in a time of change, real communication is critical, including all of the right people. That doesn't mean you're turning the whole thing into a committee. Don't worry, I don't mean that. But appropriate consultation and inclusion in advance is the secret.
Yeah, communication is key, and I think it's absolutely vital to get your team on board. You've got lots of different talks. You talk about lots of different things. Tell me about your 7-step to profit framework.
Well, at the core of what I do as a consultant and as a speaker is the following. Most organizations struggle with the best intentions in the boardroom making it through to the front line, whether that's around culture, strategy, leadership, customer intentions, whatever. The board members are usually seasoned executives that know the right way to do things. And their best intentions start there. But too often it doesn't make it through. There's often a disconnect between what happens with the driver in the truck and the girl on the checkout, that they don't always line up. Now, that's a challenge for almost any organization, no matter how well-intentioned they are. And that's where we come in. That's where I come in as a consultant and as a speaker. So when I'm speaking, I speak on what I call the 7 steps to profit. Now, this is a model that I've developed from observing the best organizations around the world for 30 years. Because you might ask, why are these great organizations so successful? Well, it's because they have a very structured path to excellence. They all follow what I call the 7 steps to profit. That includes things like from having a really clearly defined North Star, that's vision, mission stuff, all the way through, Jane, to execution. And along the way, you've got things like culture and strategy and leadership. But like I said, best intentions don't always make it through to the front line. Common sense is not always common practice. So my talks, therefore, is I speak on the 7 steps to profit. I also speak on elements within that, depending on where the organization is at and what they want to focus on in their event. It could be culture,
Yeah.
Jane. It could be customer service, where we tell stories around what other great organizations, B2C and B2B, have done to drive a customer service culture in the first place. But Jane, I want to stress that my talks are very practical. While what I said to you is somewhat high level in terms of boardroom intentions and so on, but at the end of the day, the people in the room need to know what can they do differently the very next
Yeah.
day. So if the topic is around culture or leadership or customer service, I guarantee you they will leave with tips that they can put into practice the very next
That's
day. Because I do have that. I mean, to me, being
yeah.
practical, being commercial, being empathetic is
I mean,
critical.
our clients often ask for key takeaways. They want to be able to hit the ground running as soon as the conference or the event is over, and their team have
Yeah.
all these tools at their disposal that they can start implementing right away.
Yes.
So, in terms
Yeah.
of the future, looking ahead a little bit, what major shifts do you see shaping the future of business, and how can organizations prepare themselves to stay ahead of that curve?
Well, I can't ignore the fact that AI is a huge, huge issue. And even though there's not much evidence of it taking jobs
Mm,
yet, it's going to
yeah,
come for sure. But I'm not an AI expert. I don't pretend to be. But then, of course, we also have all the geopolitical shifts. I mean, this conversation between you and I is being recorded in February 2025. And right now, there are geopolitical shenanigans going on in the White House between that and Ukraine and the proposed Gaza Riviera and all those kind of unbelievable, amazing things. Not to offer a political view on them, but they are significant issues in the world. But Jane, I should also say that while these are major, major issues, there are always major issues, Jane. It could be like a few years ago, it was COVID. So that's our reality in life, being able to cope with change and getting ahead of it as best we
yeah,
can, in as much as we can. So to me, I kind of take a kind of a lighter view here, Jane, than getting alarmed over major geopolitical shifts, which are very, very sad and very real. I think standing back as businesses, the ways of coping haven't changed. The examples of what we have to cope with keep changing, but the skill of how we cope hasn't changed. So, what do I see in the future, Jane? I can see into the future no better than you can. But what I can see is the ongoing need for leaders to be able to be like
yeah.
agility, for example, that critical need to be innovative, to be agile, to be customer centric, to have great accountability. They haven't gone away, and they will never go
Mm.
away.
Good point. Um, have you got a real life example of how you've gone in, done some consulting or speaking with a client and, had some really positive feedback in terms of results?
I have a couple of examples. Jane, I'm a bit unusual as a speaker in the way that I approach all of my speaking events. I don't just rock up and deliver a signature keynote that I might have delivered last week to two or three different companies. I genuinely tailor my content every single time. So it starts with a brief, and I listen very carefully to understand. I mean, after all, I'm a change management consultant. That's what I do every day. I listen and listen and listen to really get under the hood of what is this client challenged with. Then I ask the client to give me the names of three delegates who will be attending the event. Now, I want them to give me one rock star, somebody who's totally like a speedy. If you might come back to my emoji examples, give me one person, let's call them a harmony, somebody who needs to be cajoled, and the third person who is a comfy. And I want to interview those people confidentially, no names mentioned. Why? Because that gives me
Yeah.
richness. I'm able to then, from the brief that I was given from the client, to be able to go and now get examples. So when I talk to those three people and I'm getting real live stories and anxieties and
Mm.
whatever, and then I can bring those messages into my keynote, which means that the keynote then is genuinely tailored for that particular event and audience. So I can tell you examples without mentioning names where the initial brief that the client gave me changed actually as a result of those three interviews. I'm not saying it happens every time, but it can happen where the client has genuinely taken on board the feedback that I would give as a consultant and be able to help them slightly mold the agenda in a slightly different direction. Another example is, and Veolia in the UK won't mind me saying this. They've got 15,000 people in the UK and Ireland, and they came to me because they have a cadre of leaders, high potential leaders that are being groomed for succession over time. 25 of them, and they do different things with them a few times a year. So for their event in, I can't remember, September last year, they approached me to speak about leadership at their event. And the more we got talking, we had a great old chat on the briefing call. And I could see there's something else going on here, that maybe there's an opportunity to do something different. Now, Jane, what I didn't tell you is that linked to the 7 steps, I have developed an organisation health assessment. The organisation health assessment is a series of questions directly related to the 7 steps to profit. After all, the 7 steps to profit embrace everything about a business. But this organisation health assessment is very powerful because it's a great, it's like a full body MRI scan on a business. So what we agreed with Veolia was that the 25 people that will be at the event completed this survey in advance. And that gave me then an aggregate score, which we turned into a Veolia straw man. On the day, we moved from a 45-minute keynote presentation to a full day workshop. So that's what they asked me to then do a full day workshop working through. Now, what happened, what everybody walked away with, Jane, was 2 things. One was learning about the 7 steps to profit, because it is kind of MBA level kind of stuff. But not only that, they also got to discuss the real live issues in Veolia. How? Because their survey, which they scored, not me, their scores, I was able to give them feedback, and they agreed action plans on the day. So it was a very, very powerful example of taking a consulting approach to speaking, rather than just, as I said, rocking up, but actually taking a real consultative way of what's the right thing to do here. Now, Jane, we don't do workshops in every case. I went to Auckland for 45 minutes. So don't get me wrong. It's just when it's appropriate. And if the client is in the mood to look differently at things, we can work together to plan a great conference.
What do you love most about speaking, Alan?
Oh gosh, they can't give me enough likes, Jane. That's the problem. They can't give me enough likes. I love it. I genuinely, no, but on a serious level, I mean, of course I love it. I mean, all of us speakers, if we don't love speaking and holding the stage, but you know what I really, really love? The transformation that comes about, that you're influencing people to shift a few cogs in their brain. Now, they're not going in blue and coming out purple. I'm not saying that, but there is a shift. You can always see a shift, and you can tell by the looks on faces, you can tell by the questions and the way people come up afterwards or might email afterwards. I love that, because after all, change management is what I do. I live in that frenetic world of change, and knowing that the people that I'm chatting to, whether that's in a one-on-one, Jane, over a coffee in a coffee shop somewhere, or whether it be in a conference with 1,000 people, I just love to see that transformation. And the interesting thing is, it's not always about people agreeing with me, but I feel that people like us, Jane, have a role to provoke thought. That if the listener doesn't entirely agree with everything that I said, well, if they come out of the event with a better opinion of something that is even at variance to what I said, what's wrong with that?
If you'd like Alan to come and talk to your team to inspire them and to help them thrive through any organisational change, then do call or email anytime. You can get us on 01753 439 289, or you can email jane@greatbritishtalent.com. Thank you.